מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך באנשים, מי כמוך בכל, אין כמוך אדוני. מי כמוך באלים, מי כמוך באנשים, מי רואה כמוך אשר מי כמוך באלים, כמוך נשים, כמוך בכל רואה כמוך אל שדי, מי כמוך אדוני, מי כמוך אלוהים, מי כמוך הוויה, אין כמוך כמוך בכל רואה כמוך אשר is like you, oh God is like you, oh man who is like you above all things is no one like you. El Shaddai, who is like you, Adonai, who is like you, Elohim, who is like you, Yeshua, there is no one like you. El Shaddai, Mikamocha, Adonai, Mikamocha, Elohim, Mikamocha, Yeshua, and Kamocha, there's no one like pagan symbols and pagan origins, and the attacking of the children's mind for material gain. We're not playing that game. Seeing I am tough. Christmas has been cancelled, it's been postponed, no longer celebrated in our own. Pagan things, we try to leave them alone, incorporated into Christianity by Rome. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game, what a shame. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game. Are the drunkenness and the overeating? Is it the birth of Christ they're celebrating? Mostly non-Christians are partaking. This is just an excuse for money making. Them say peace and goodwill to all men. So how come they putting up the prices then? Targeting the parents through the children. Well, them not get higher and higher again. No way, my friend. Christmas has been cancelled. It's been postponed. No longer celebrated in our own. Pagan things, we try to leave them alone. Incorporated into Christianity by Rome. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain. We're not playing the Christmas game, what a shame. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain. We're not playing the Christmas game. A long time, the 25th of December has been a special day in the pagan calendar. Long before the birth of Christ, it was a day for partying and celebrating and to rejoice. From Nimrod to Saturn to Mithra, these gods were always honored on that day in December, worshipping of sun gods and idols. Why you think Christmas is never mentioned in the Bible? Christmas has been cancelled, it's been postponed, no longer celebrated in our own. Pagan things, we try to leave them alone, incorporated into Christianity by Rome. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game, what a shame. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game. You see the tree and the ivy and the mistletoe, all of these were pagan things a long time ago. People have them in their house and they don't know what they mean. They just come and see them, so they just join in. Santa Claus, what a fraud, never once come on me yard and my parents. And we work so hard. Christmas put people under pressure. Don't you see that Santa and Satan have got the same letters? Christmas has been cancelled, it's been postponed, no longer celebrated in our own. Pagan things, we try to leave them alone, incorporated into Christianity by Rome. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game, what a shame. We're using our brain, we're breaking the chain, we're not playing the Christmas game. Them say Christmas is just video, when it's about time we tell the youth them the truth. Instead of buying love with expensive gift, give them the ideal love we should be dealing with. Children's minds are being attacked by the big companies. Christmas time is when they do the most business. I give my children presents any time of the year, not only on birthdays and when Christmas is near. Cause a lot of people in a dead over Christmas. A lot of people like red cause of Christmas. A lot of people in a prison cause of Christmas. A lot of people gone missing over Christmas. Commercial Christmas, you know it's not right. It's not really dealing with the birth of the Christ. Don't make them pressure you with your choice. It's alright to remove it from your life.
To many in the West, it is treated as the Jewish alternative to Christmas, but nothing could be further from the truth. Others call it the Festival of Lights, but in Hebrew it is simply called Hanukkah. But what is Hanukkah, and where does its observation originate? The term Hanukkah comes from the Hebrew word for dedication, specifically appearing in connection to the sanctifying of the altar of Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth. We first see the term in the Torah, the books of Moses, in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 7. Zot Hanukkah HaMizbeach Vayom HaMashach. This is the dedication of the altar and the day of its anointing. The custom of observing Hanukkah annually, however, is not commanded in the Torah. In fact, the Hanukkah celebration, as kept today, is not found within the Hebrew canon of the Tanakh, referred to as the Old Testament by Christianity. The reason for this is because Hanukkah is a historic celebration commemorating events that transpired in the 2nd century BC that took place after the canonizing of the Hebrew Tanakh. However, the Greek canon of the translated Hebrew text, known as the Septuagint, does contain the history of Hanukkah in the books of the Maccabees, which was originally included in the King James Version of the Bible. In the 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great spread Greek culture by conquest and colonization throughout the regions surrounding the Mediterranean. By the age of 30, he had created one of the largest empires of the ancient world, stretching from Greece to northwestern India. Alexander built cities for religious and political means on the ruins of empires he had destroyed. The effects of his conquest would create a cultural shift that would change the world. This cultural shift is known as Hellenization. This term comes from the Greek word Hellas, which was the original name of Greece. The Hellenization process promoted a universal concept of culture by blending Greek philosophies, traditions, and language with the conquered lands. This made the entire region a literal melting pot of religion, science, art, and music. This shift was celebrated by many and welcomed by most. For the Yahudim, who are called Jews, however, the Hellenization process would largely be rejected. 400 years prior, they had returned to their ancestral homeland from Persia, having been exiled by Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel. The book of Ezra records edicts from Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, kings of Persia, who all gave edicts for the rebuilding of the temple of Yahuwah, the one and only creator of heaven and earth, in Jerusalem. The first temple had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar's siege against Jerusalem. The temple was originally built and dedicated by King Solomon and was a true marvel of architecture. The rebuilding of the temple was a monumental effort for the Yahudim, especially in the wake of re-establishing their nation. The temple was a colossal structure with panels overlaid with gold furniture, and exquisite tapestries. The treasury rooms of the temple were filled with gold and silver. The rebuilding of the temple and the return from the exile were already prophesied to take place by the prophet Daniel previously. The Yahudim clearly had favor with the kings of the earth and also with the king of heaven. Despite this, however, many Jews at this time became Hellenized, participating in various Greek traditions and even adopting Greek names. This would only worsen when the unexpected death of Alexander the Great took place in 323 BCE. Alexander had no heir to his throne, therefore, he divided his reign with his 4 generals. For this reason, the prophet Daniel had previously been shown in a vision the nation of Greece represented as a leopard having 4 heads. Seleucus ruled over Asia Minor, Syria, and Babylonia, and later Yehuda or Judea. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule everyone in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. While in the land of Babylon, the prophet Daniel was given a vision depicting the destruction of Media Persia at the hand of Alexander the Great. This very war is enshrined in the Alexander mosaic to this very day, where we can see a depiction of Alexander the Great coming against Darius III and his empire. Daniel was given this vision way before it even took place. This is very important In the book of Daniel, or Daniel chapter 8, we see that the Medo-Persian Empire is represented as a ram with two horns, which is attacked and destroyed by a goat that has a single horn. According to the book of Daniel chapter 8, this is the country of Greece and its first king. We read this in the book of Daniel chapter 8, verse 20. The ram which you saw having two horns are the sovereigns of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the sovereign of Greece. And the large horn between its eyes is the first sovereign, who is Alexander the Great. And that it was broken and four stood up in its place are four rulerships arising out of that nation, but not in its own power. And in the latter time of their rule, when the transgressors have filled up their measure, a sovereign, fierce of face, and skilled at intrigues, shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy incredibly, and shall prosper and thrive, and destroy mighty men, and the Kodesh, the set apart people, speaking of the Yahudim, the Jews. This is a prophecy concerning Antiochus Epiphanes when he would destroy Jerusalem and the people of Yahweh. The prophet Daniel has been shown before it even took place what would transpire. Further, we read in the book of Daniel chapter 8 that he would put an end to the continual sacrifices that are done, that he would pollute the sanctuary, and that he would even make the messengers in the heavens stumble at the work which he was doing on the earth. And we will talk about those in just a moment. The book of Maccabees, chapter 1, the first book of Maccabees, Hamakabim, chapter 1, tells us what took place to allow these events to transpire. In the book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 11, we read, "In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise, or a gymnasium, at Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the Kodesh, the set-apart covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief." A gymnasium in the ancient world was not just a place where you went and exercised. This was a place where you were educated in the mystery religions of the Greeks, where you would learn about their deities and pay homage to them, and you would perform naked in front of them, supposedly for their amusement. Therefore, the children of Israel were blaspheming against Yahweh, making themselves indecent, making themselves uncircumcised, and they were doing this in the very place where Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, said that his name would be forever. That is Jerusalem. A century and a half after the death of Alexander, Antiochus Epiphanes became king over the Seleucid Empire. Antiochus Epiphanes is the name he bestowed upon himself, literally meaning the deity made manifest. His original name was Mithridates, meaning gift of Mithras, one of the deities of ancient Persia, which the Greeks also worship and is still worshipped in the Zoroastrian religion to this day. Mithras was one of the Persian versions of Sol Invictus, which was adopted by the Hellenistic pantheon as the deity of the sun. Clearly, Antiochus believed he was a deity, as can be seen in coins minted by him and depicting him seated on the throne of Zeus. He was sometimes called Epiphanes, meaning madman, a play on the word Epiphanes. This was done by people in his empire because they knew that he was insane. Since the reign of Antiochus III, the father of Antiochus Epiphanes, the Jews, the Yahudim, had enjoyed extensive autonomy under the high priest. They were divided into different parties, namely two: the Hashmonim, or the Hasidians, which were the pious ones, the ones who guarded the Torah and kept the covenant, and a Reform party, which favored Hellenism. For financial reasons, Antiochus Epiphanes supported the Hellenized Jews. According to 2nd Maccabees, a Hellenized Jew by the name of Yahushua renamed himself Yason, or Jesus, the name which gives us Jesus, and purchased the position of high priest from the Greek king Antiochus. The rightful high priest was displaced by the power of the king. Jason, or Jesus, built a gymnasium in Jerusalem to introduce the Greek mode of educating young people and created customs opposed to the Torah. In ancient times, the gymnasium was a place to worship and participate in various games in the nude. Jason, or Jesus, even donated large sums of silver to the sacrifice of the Greek deity Hercules, as recorded in the book of Maccabees. His brother, Melanius, purchased the right to be high priest behind his back from the king. Jason, or Yason, Jesus, he was so angry that he attacked the city of Jerusalem, slaying many of his own countrymen. He did this because he thought Antiochus had died fighting against Ptolemy for the reign of Egypt, or Mitzrayim. This commotion, however, was perceived by Antiochus as a revolt because he did not die in Egypt. Therefore, Antiochus marched upon Jerusalem. Within 3 days, he had slaughtered 40,000 Yahudim, including women and children, along with the elderly. He sold about the same number into slavery. Melanius, the priest, guided Antiochus to the location of the Kodesh, the set-apart vessels and gifts that had been given by kings to the temple of Yahuwah. Antiochus left with 1,800 talents of gold, which he plundered from the temple. Antiochus changed the name of Jerusalem to Antioch after his own name. In the writings of the historian Josephus Flavius, who is also a Kohen, a priest of the Yahudim, the Jews, we read in the Jewish war, the king being there to dispose beforehand, complied with it, and came upon the Jews with a great army, and took their city by force, and slew a great multitude of those who favored Ptolemy, and sent out his soldiers to plunder them without mercy. He also spoiled the temple, and put a stop to the constant practice of offering a daily sacrifice of expiation for the 3 years and 6 months. The events that transpired during the first Hanukkah will be repeated in the last days. As the old saying goes, history has a way of repeating itself, and we know this to be true, especially in the scriptures. We see that events repeat themselves time and time again. The book of Maccabees takes place during that period between the prophet Malachi and the book of Matithyahu, during that gap of time. So it is very important because this fills in many gaps in history for those who are unaware of the lesson of the Maccabees. And those of you who are familiar, you could still learn many things by studying the accounts year after year. In 1st Maccabean, or Maccabees, chapter 1, we read in verse 41, "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king." You see, this was seen as a multicultural melting pot where everybody had an equal opportunity to be one people, and you could be equal with the Greeks. No matter what your status in the empire was, you could now be a Greek citizen. You see, and it seemed on the surface to be very innocent. People like this idea today, the idea of having a melting pot of culture and religion and politics,
and being open-minded and progressive and staying with the times and moving and changing laws and changing ideas and changing those long-held perspectives. That today, if you have those kind of ideas, the idea of being singular, the idea of having your own religion or your own point of view, and it has anything to do with the scriptures at all, then there is always a problem. There's always a problem. If you believe in the scriptures, if you promote the idea of Yahuwah Elohim and his Torah, then you will be persecuted. People will be against you, just as they were at this time, you see, because the Yahudim did not go along with this commandment of the king. Some of them did, as we're going to read, but not all of them. And this is because, essentially, the king's warning was to forsake the Torah, because the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, are often called the law. It means the instructions. But it is also the law, the constitution for the people of Yahuwah. So therefore the king's requirement was that they forsake the Torah given by Yahuwah. You see, Yahuwah's laws are not like the laws of the nations. They're very specific, but the laws of the nations are very similar. They have similar sacrifices, similar deities, similar idols. All these things are very similar. So a synchronicity was being formed within the Greco Empire, and we see that this synchronicity was used to persecute the way of Yahuwah. It says further, it says, and many of the Israelites consented to this religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Shabbat, the Sabbath. You see, this is a key to the understanding here. This whole event is transpiring because of compromise. Because the people of Yahuwah, some of them compromised along the way. They wanted to be like the other nations. They envied the way of the other nations. And so therefore, at the first opportunity to compromise, they had compromised. You see, this idea of Hellenization still exists today. It is a mindset. It is something where you have accepted a multicultural concept that allows you to somehow slip and slide into other perversions that lead you away from Yahuwah and worshiping false deities and breaking the Sabbath and doing all these things. It says further, for the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Yehudah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple of Yahuwah. And they should profane the Sabbaths and the festival days and pollute the sanctuary and the Kodesh people. And they set up altars and groves. Now, groves are called asherim in the Hebrew language. These are sacred trees. The scriptures tell us that the ancient pagans, the Canaanites, the Hittites, and the Amorites, and all the people in the region, that they set up evergreen trees and that they put abominations under every green tree. And the Israelites would also fall into this abomination time and time again. This is also referenced by the prophet Yirmiyahu, who says that the heathen would cut down evergreen trees and bring them into their home and decorate them with gold and silver. Does this sound familiar? This was what was happening. And Yahuwah says this was a pollution on the land. That the heathen, the Greeks, were setting up these altars, these sacred trees, and it says further, chapels of idols, and sacrificing swine's flesh, which is to'ebah, or abomination, according to Yahuwah Elohim, an unclean beast, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with the manner of uncleanliness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the Torah, the law, and change all of the ordinances. And whoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Anyone who would not break the covenant of Yahuwah would be put to death according to the king.
Prophets return, Babylon will burn. Prophets return, all of them will keep their turn. Prophets return,
Everyone has got to learn. Life in the world is madness. Preachers of the good news, they bring us gladness. Push away the sadness. So don't deal with badness. No, no, no. Righteousness alone. Justice, wisdom, proceed from your throne. Ready to go home. Zion need a song. Yes. Prophets return. Babylon will burn. Prophets return, return. All of them, they get the turn. Prophets return. Babylon will burn. Prophets return, return. Time to discern. The world was not worthy for man is righteous to them. Outcasts of society, living kids cast in the lion's den. Got to return for the blessings they never received. You see, we give Babylon brought to the knees. Prophets return, Babylon will burn. Prophets return, return. All of them, they get the turn. Prophets return, Babylon will burn. Prophets return, return. Time to discern. Kol Hanashama, Hallelujah. Truth set us free, shepherds from the king, princes ruling justice, that's how it shall be. Everyone living righteously, health in the scriptures, health is reality. No more pain, no more sorrow, only joy, evermore. It's a bright tomorrow, ancient words, that's for sure. Prophets return, Babylon will burn. Prophets return. You got to learn. The prophets return. Babylon will burn. Prophets return. A lot of them, they get to turn. Yes, Jeremiah return. Hey, Isaiah return. Hey, Daniel return. Ezekiel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob return. Prophets return. Babylon learn. Prophets return, return. Everyone, they will learn. The prophets return. Babylon learn. Ancient word is return. Time to discern. The world was not worthy of man's righteous down. Rejected by society, persecuted, afflicted by man, they will return to receive the promises from Yahweh. Inherit everlasting life in the kingdom, that's what we say. Prophets return. Faithful and true, God will not change. His promises will come true.
I had thanks and praise of it. I Selassie, I Jah, Rastafari, for all the things he's done for it. Help us, Jah, Jah, 'cause we put our trust in thee. Help us, Jah, Jah, let us to live in love and harmony. Help us, Jah, Jah, 'cause we're hanging on desperately. Help us, Jah, Jah,
I hear the crying of fathers, one desperately dying in search for peace. I hear the marching of soldiers, one like unto the wicked, they trample on their feet. Help us, Jah Jah, for we put our trust in thee. Help us, Jah Jah, let us to live in love and harmony. Help us, Jah Jah, cause we're hanging on desperately. Help us, Jah Jah, please help us. I see the struggle of youths without a future and not to achieve. I see the innocent victims, trouble and crosses that make my heart grieve. I hear the mourning of loved ones, and there is no one who seems to care. I see the rich and the privileged turning away their faces and don't want to share. So help us, Jah Jah, for we put our trust in thee. Help us, Jah Jah, let us to live in love and harmony. Help us, Jah Jah, for we're hanging on desperately. Help us, Jah Jah, please care of me. I see unfortunate prisoners treated less than the humans they are. I see congested prison that hold the victims of political war. I see misguided people living on promises that I never fulfill. I see negligent leaders with the art of deception. They are very skilled. Help us, Jah Jah, for we put our trust in thee. Help us, Jah Jah, let us to live in love and harmony. Help us, Jah Jah, cause we're hanging on desperately. Help us, Jah Jah, please help me. I see broken communities with the afflicted people abandoning their homes. I see dismantled families who have no connection, not even by phone. I see trouble awaiting the frustrated people who cannot take no more. And I am anticipating the fulfillment of prophecy that is behind the door. So help us, Jah Jah, for we put our trust in thee. Help us, Jah Jah, let us to live in love and harmony. Bless us, Jah Jah, for we do belong to thee. Help us, Jah Jah, please care with me. Come, let thine eyes upon the hills, from whence cometh thine help? Thine help cometh from Jah Rastafari. Will not suffer and I put to you. Jah keep Israel shall never slumber. Jah keep Israel shall never slumber. Nor sleep. See that.